In terms of the chocolate, do Indians like chocolatey chocolate or do they prefer, do you have any of those that you've been able to glean so far?
I am a kid who grew up in the 90s, and for me, growing up, for me, a chocolate is a dairy,
Yeah.
right? And I like it, right? I grew up eating that. I have a strong connection with it. I find it yummy,
Yeah.
right? We have a tendency in the craft world to come and say what you like is not good. You should not, you should like something else, or you need to elevate yourself to enjoy
A
something
better
better.
product. Yeah.
Yeah. But I like what I like.
Mm.
Who's anybody to tell me that I should like something else?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So our attempt has been to kind of align those two worlds,
Mhm.
to balance familiarity with inventiveness and complexity.
Hi, and welcome to Big Food Energy, a podcast that spotlights some of the most exciting food businesses in India and around the world. Today, we're speaking with Chaitanya Muppala, the CEO of India's first craft chocolate company. After 13 years of focusing on how to revolutionize and scale the Indian sweets and snacks space at his family business Almond House, Chaitanya is tuning his taste buds to chocolate, turning his learnings from one sweet category to another. But it's not just chocolate that Chaitanya is focused on. He's using AI and blockchain technology and creating transparency across the entire supply chain to create a global name for Indian cacao beans and build a chocolate experience that's unique to India. He's bringing all of his Hyderabad techie smarts to the chocolate business and revolutionizing the world of craft chocolate. Today, we're speaking to him about just that. Hi, Chaitanya, and welcome to Big Food Energy.
Hi, Smitha. It's quite an introduction.
So
Eh,
I'm glad you liked it. Thank you.
and
Nizing,
Revolutionize. It,
revolutionizing.
it,
Yeah,
it's yeah. I
it's
don't
quite a
know if
tongue
I,
twister as well.
and also it's a, if you can't pronounce it, don't say it. It's too doesn't apply.
Fair enough. That's a good principle to live by. But Chaitanya, of course, I've been to Hyderabad and I've seen what you're doing in Hyderabad and what you're trying to build. But for people listening in who don't have context, could you explain what Manam does?
Sure. Uh, So Manam Chocolate is a craft chocolate brand. It attempts to interpret what we think craft chocolate should be, and it tries to introduce this category to a market like India, where craft chocolate as a concept is unfamiliar. We're trying to introduce that concept and interpret it in a way that applies and is relatable and is sort of accepted by
Mm-hmm.
Indians. So it's designed for us as Indians. Now it's part of this company called Distinct Origins, which also does a lot of work on the agri supply chain of craft chocolate, which is
Mm-hmm.
primarily fine flavor cacao.
Okay.
Now, this is in contrast to industrial or commercial bulk cacao, which is a commodity that is consumed by the industrial chocolate industry. So they just to draw a distinction, industrial chocolate and commercial and bulk cacao are optimized for reasons to do with productivity.
Right.
Fine flavor cacao, from which craft chocolate is made, is an endeavor to optimize for complexity and flavor that can come from the bean. Now, Manam Chocolate interprets craft chocolate in its own way, which is in the form of an elevated retail experience and a vast and wide range of products that spread over 300 different unique products uh, that are part of over 50 categories.
Okay. Wow. That's quite something. Obviously, Chaitanya, there are a few homegrown chocolate brands in the space that derive flavor from Indian cacao beans. What
Yeah.
makes Manam's approach different from everything else that's out there?
What we do is we start at soil. So the entire cacao bean and before the bean part, which is covered in distinct origins, is uh, uh, kind of what starts making us different. So we built what we're told is something around along the lines of the second largest fine flavor cacao fermentary in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we start with scale. That's something that makes us different. So we work with over 100 farmers. Last year, we worked with over 100 farmers, spread over 1,500 acres. What we're trying to do is trying to build our origin, where we are currently located, which is in West Godavari, as a origin for craft chocolate makers globally. So we want them to use our beans
Mm-hmm.
and make great chocolate, right? That's one part of our business. Now, uh, what we do differently from other craft chocolate brands goes into how we interpret what craft chocolate should be. We do it from the perspective of us being Indians
Mm-hmm.
and that this is an Indian market. Uh, without being reductionist of ourselves as Indians, with trying to interpret our tastes as Indians in a complex enough manner, uh, and to we kind of approach the problem slightly differently. We don't see this as you commonly hear or you're familiar with the terms of bean to bar
Mm-hmm.
or pod to bar or
Right.
tree to
Tree to
bar or
bar.
any
Right.
any permutation or combination of that.
Mm-hmm.
But we see this as starting much before the bean. We start crafting with soil, with terroir, with genetics. We're trying to work with what varietal yields, what sort of complexity, and what sort of flavor. And there's a lot of work on that part of the entire craft chain of chocolate making. And we see this as something that goes well beyond the bar. You know, we don't see craft chocolate as something that should be restricted to a bar, because we don't see that for us as Indians as an association with chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
The primary association with chocolate for us is not a bar, but it's all those products that we've grown up eating, where chocolate has played a key role as ingredient. So it's that Black Forest cake that we all ate as children from the local bakery, or the cornetto ice cream, where we ate the ice cream and the cone, and at the bottom of the cone, you had that sweet dollop of chocolate. So it's these associations that we have as Indians with this ingredient.
Yeah.
And this is an attempt to deconstruct those associations and reconstruct them in new, elevated, and unique manners into all of these products that we do. So we do about 300 products spread over 50 different categories, starting from chocolate as a product, which are your chocolate, which
Mm-hmm.
are your bonbons, truffles, nama, janduia, pralines, tablets, what we call our bars, and chocolate as an ingredient, where you have your cakes, pastries, mono
Right.
portions, muffins, macaroons, venozeri, uh, all of that. Chocolate as it intersects with ice cream, chocolate as a beverage, chocolate in snacking, chocolate interpreted as gifts, and chocolate interpreted as retail experiences, right? So
Right.
we're trying to create this sort of what we call a world of endless confection. That it's really about how we apply this chocolate, and that's our association with it, more than just a bar, which is what predominantly you see in craft chocolate right now.
Cool. I mean, that's super fascinating. Chaitanya, obviously you have been at the helm of Almond House, your family business, for many years. Uh, After years of making mithai and snacks, could you explain why you saw the need to move to chocolate?
I don't know if we saw the need to move to chocolate,
Okay.
but we I mean, this in many ways is accidental,
Mm-hmm.
and there was, to begin with, a strategic intent that we needed to do something around chocolate. Now, I had no idea about anything in chocolate. I knew just as much as the next guy, because chocolate is, what we knew was something that you bought from a company in a bag, you melted and you used. So it's a raw material. So we started exploring what what's happening in the chocolate market. We started mapping the context of the market, and very quickly we realized, like anybody would realize, that everybody is basically buying chocolate, melting it, putting their sea salt, putting their nuts, putting it in their packaging, and calling it their chocolate,
Right.
which didn't seem like a sustainable enough differentiation for us to get into, because assuming, and I think it's a fair enough assumption, that in India, every city is going to have two or three chocolate brands. We are going to consume, gift share, consume chocolate like we have been doing mithai for the past several
So many
decades
years.
or
Yeah.
centuries. Uh, uh, and if everybody is going to buy the same thing and make the same thing, pretty soon it's going to be a very homogeneous product mix,
Hmm.
kind of like mithai has become,
Yeah.
right? It's it becomes challenging to differentiate, uh, and also it creates for sort of saturation where everybody makes the same thing, and everybody is basically making the same thing with the same raw material, which didn't it really didn't make sense to me.
Hmm.
And so then we also realized that your chocolate is only as good as your beans are,
Hmm.
and Indian cacao generally has had a bad reputation, primarily because all of this cacao has been grown and been propagated for industrial needs, right?
Right.
All the varietals, all the genetics that we have in India have been, the cacao was brought to India by industrial players, right? They
Hmm.
continue to drive that market uh, world over. But uh, if your chocolate is only as good as your beans and everybody is buying the same crappy beans, then everybody is going to make crappy chocolate.
Yeah.
We had no idea where these beans come from or who's growing them, and how we can make that better. Uh, so we started spending time in farms. So we kind of landed up in West Godavari. We started spending time with farmers, you know, spending time in farms, and that was like a 2 year sort of gallivanting in the farms. With it's many times you have to be aimless to get somewhere, and it was really without any particular goal in mind,
Hmm.
right? And that kind of slowly led us to realizing that there is potential for us to do something with cacao, right? There is
Right.
all this cacao growing in this district, and all of it is being purchased at a very inequitable price for the commodity market, and it's
Hmm.
more or less kind of it's kind of hidden. So what can we do there? We started, developing this technology. We started working on fermentation, and we started seeing how we can work with farmers. And we did a pilot project 1 year where we, gave farmers some equipment. We learned from them. We discussed with them on how we can improve this, and of course, we had all the information resources that we had available to us through the internet. The craft chocolate community globally is extremely small, and there's a lot of exchange of ideas. So we started trying to do that work, and we realized that it's not something that we can do in a sort of decentralized fashion where we work with each farmer individually and we expect them to do all that work to make or
Right.
to work towards fine cacao. So that's when we decided we'll build this fermentary.
Hmm. Could you
And
explain what a fermentary is for
yeah,
someone who doesn't have that context, and talk a little bit about what this region of West Godavari is like? What is the weather like? What grows there, and how does that sort of contribute to the flavor of the chocolate?
yeah. Let me start with when uh, what the context of cacao in India,
Mm-hmm.
right? Cacao came to India or was brought to India somewhere around the early 1960s. It
Mm-hmm.
was brought by large multinationals
Mm-hmm.
that
Like a
make,
Cadbury's or whatever that wanted to grow
yeah,
this chocolate in
that
India.
that make either chocolate or compound, which is chocolate without cacao fat
Mm-hmm.
replaced with vegetable fat or hydrogenated fat or palm oil,
Mm-hmm.
or or used for purposes where they export the fat to other places, other markets where they have laws on what cacao fat, how much cacao fat should be in chocolate, etc.,
I see.
etc. So since it was brought here, they brought a set of varietals that are hybridized for industrial purposes, right? Now, what 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 were they optimized for? They were optimized for things like disease resistance,
Mm-hmm.
yield per acre, yield of fat per kg of
I
bean,
see. Mm-hmm.
but almost never complexity of flavor, because industrial chocolate, which is all of the chocolate that we've grown up eating, which is mass produced bulk chocolate, uh, aims at having a efficient production and having a very consistent flavor profile that is devoid of complexity, right? Craft chocolate, what we are trying to do, we are trying to see what the bean can offer
Mm-hmm.
and how we leverage that in terms of flavor and complexity in the chocolate, right? We're not alkalizing, we're not
Right.
getting rid of everything. Uh, we are trying to process as little as possible, just enough so that we can get rid of what we don't want in that bean and keep what we want in that bean. What can we do with all the trees that are already planted here
Right.
rather than writing them off, right? They are not the best genetic pool, but certainly there might be something that we could do with it. So we are compensating for the lack of strong genetics in the cacao that's planted in India through science, the
Mm-hmm.
science of fermentation and drying. And this is in distinction to how cacao is fermented right now. So what happens is a fruit, to make chocolate, this fruit needs to be harvested. This pod needs to be broken open. Inside the pod, there are about 30 to 50 beans that are covered in this really sweet pulp.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really yummy fruit. You haven't had one, right? You have?
I have, I did. Yeah, it's almost like
Uh,
a custard apple. It's like
yeah,
fleshy and sweet.
yeah. Mangosteen,
Yeah,
sitafal.
yeah,
It's a really interesting. It tastes nothing like chocolate.
yeah. You would never think that that would, is where chocolate comes from.
Yeah. So what we're trying to then do is we're trying to use the sugars in that pulp uh, to convert to ethyl alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
right? And use culture and bacteria to convert that alcohol into acetic acid, right? And that is the process of fermentation, which is done to develop flavor in the cacao bean, which is then dried and then roasted and then ground and then made into chocolate. Broad stroke,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to see what we can do with Indian cacao, even
Mm-hmm.
though genetically it's optimized for industrial purposes. How can we create complexity and get fine flavor out of it? And we thought we'd do that through science.
Mm-hmm.
Every bean is fermented, and we're recording that, right?
Okay.
And while we ferment it, and then we make chocolate from it. We're connecting back which technique of fermentation or what sort of temperature gradient or what values of bricks result in what sort of flavors.
Okay. So you're
Flavors.
collecting this information. How are you collecting this information?
So we built this whole software sort of platform that
Hmm.
helps us engage with farmers to begin with.
Okay.
We have a different procurement system which is designed to benefit the farmer
Hmm.
while making sure we get them to use the best practices that we need to uh, try and get the best out of this cacao. So, in the process that I described earlier, the farmer harvests, he deseeds, he ferments crudely, he dries, then he sells this to a agent who buys on behalf of an industrial buyer, and then he'll get paid in a month or 45 days, etc.
Sure.
So the cycle between harvest to payment is nearly about 60, 60 days to
Hmm.
90 days, right?
Hmm.
In our system, it's all digitized.
Hmm.
So we don't buy beans, we buy fruit from farmers.
Okay.
We take care of everything. The farmer has to take care of tending to his soil and his trees and make sure he follows a certain set of farming practices that benefit uh, the quality of cacao. So what we do is, the farmer harvests, a truck goes. There's a system. It's all on these mobile apps that our guys have when they go there. There's a price that's determined through a preset formula, which
Hmm.
is then sort of shared instantly over WhatsApp, and within 24 hours he gets paid,
That's
right?
incredible.
That's what this program allows us to do till we procure, and all of this also allows us to collect data and trace where every bean came from. So we know exactly which farm a lot of beans came from, right? When you buy a chocolate bar in the supermarket, you have no idea where that cacao came from.
Yeah.
And even if it is labeled single origin a country, they have no idea which part of that origin it came from. So
Hmm.
generally, these are also terms that are being used to confuse or to sort of marketeer chocolate.
Chocolate. Right.
Uh, if I say single origin India, it means nothing because India has four cacao growing regions,
Hmm.
right? It could just mean that it's bulk commercial cacao that's sort of bought at the commodity market. You know it's from India
Hmm.
because it's bought in India, but you don't know where it's from.
Right.
It right? There is no trace on exactly where it was grown or who grew it, and it might as well just be just cacao mixed from all of these places.
Right. Could you explain why traceability is important in the chocolate space?
So, I mean, it's important to different people and different markets
Hmm.
in different ways. Primarily, all the controversy around chocolate is and cacao is that it's inequitably purchased.
Yeah.
50% of the world's cacao comes from Ivory Coast and Ghana, and we've heard over the years these associations of child labor and cacao, and whether farmers are being adequately compensated for their produce.
Hmm.
Now, traceability becomes important because one, as a consumer, if you want to make sure that the cacao being used in the chocolate that you're consuming has been procured fairly, then you would want me to show you proof,
Yeah.
right? And traceability is a concept where you're able to display or exhibit uh, where the cacao in that chocolate bar came from, who grew it, and how they were compensated for it. Right? That's the that's that's the equitable the part of the market that wants cacao to be equitable. Now, traceability also becomes important for us as craft chocolate makers from a flavor standpoint, right? We want to make chocolate that displays the characteristics of flavor and complexity of a certain terroir, that is soil, climate, altitude, a certain region, a certain farm, for instance. And how do I do that? And I could say that uh, 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 I could say cacao from Kerala is distinct because of such and such flavor profile,
Right.
right? But how am I going to make sure that all of the cacao in that bar of chocolate comes from one place? That's where traceability becomes important, right?
Right. Talk to me a little bit about West Godavari. You've been talking about extracting flavors from the soil. What is West Godavari like, and what are those flavors that are coming into your cacao?
Yeah. Uh, so we've been making chocolate from these beans that we've been putting out of our system with our uh, uh, fermentation and drying technology for the last 2.5, 3 years. It's a little early to determine what the characteristic flavors of
Sure.
this region are. Uh, uh, but you know, each year that we make chocolate, this new harvest, we slowly get to that. You know, right now for me, I think uh, uh, West Godavari, cacao from West Godavari. For now, one thing that we are seeing commonly in this origin is that you have these familiar flavor notes of molasses, jaggery, cashew nut. There is, when fermented well, there's good complexity in terms of acidity and uh, some nice citrus notes. But it's still it's too early to say
Sure.
that cacao from West Godavari
Tastes like
typically
XYZ,
tastes
right?
like this.
Sure, sure. So, Chaitanya, you're building out all of this tech to increase traceability for you as a chocolate maker, to help make sure that the farmer is being paid well. How does this tie into your plans for the parent company for distinct origins?
Yeah, I mean it's not, it would be wrong to say that we do all this for altruistic purposes, right? We do all this because there's a premium that can be gained for uh, uh, being transparent and traceable. So when I go to a chocolate maker in Europe, for instance, and I offer him my beans, now I can give him, I sell with the beans data, and data that's authenticated on a blockchain where he can see exactly when this cacao was harvested, who the individual who grew it was, how much that individual got paid,
That's
without a
amazing.
hint of doubt, and that's data that he or she can in turn use to communicate to their customer.
Right. And how does tech enrich the experience of chocolate to a customer? You've talked about it on the wholesale side, on
Yeah.
the institutional side, but how does that impact how a customer experiences the chocolate?
Now in India, what we've done is for example, if you buy our tablets, there's a QR code at the back that you scan, and it's more, we've kind of presented it more in a fun and engaging way for Indian consumers or for our consumers. That kind of it takes you to the farm that that farm tablet was grown on. It shares who the farmer is or the geolocation of that farm is, and then it kind of walks you through the entire craft of harvesting, fermenting, drying
Amazing.
cacao, and then how chocolate is made. So we've kind of used some of those data points to tell a little bit of an interactive story here. But
Hmm.
over time, as people demand more information about what they're eating, the data is available.
Right, right. Okay. You've spent 13 years building the mithai and snack space. Have you found any similarities between the two industries, or are you bringing any learnings from that into chocolate?
Yeah, I mean, we come from that pedagogy, and that's
Yeah.
what we wanted to apply to this model.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do here is we're trying to fuse two worlds
Hmm.
of craft, which is usually really small producers, creative people out on creative pursuits, and the worlds of fine premium luxury chocolate, which is usually industrial players using industrial chocolate, making retail experience around it. We're trying to create a confluence between these two worlds to bring scale to craft chocolate, right?
Right. Right.
And what we bring to the table, I mean, our pedagogy is production, scale. We understand corporate gifting, we understand gifting, we
Hmm.
understand retail experience, and that's what we've applied here. And that I think that's what kind of makes it work. That we're able to think larger.
Yeah. So Chaitanya, in general, we've been talking about mithai. The perception that most people have of the Indian consumer is that we like our stuff sweet. Whether it's mithai, it has to be super sweet. Whether it's wine, we like sweet wines. We like apple cider kind of beer that's kind of sweet. So uh, does that apply to chocolate? Do Indians prefer really sweet chocolate, or how are you sort of navigating that?
I think uh, we would be amiss if we characterized ourselves into one set of people.
Hmm.
Sure,
Sure.
we do like sweet things,
Yeah.
but I think tastes are changing,
Hmm.
uh, and you see two sets of consumers, or you see different sets of consumers with different tastes. I don't see a lot of people saying this is too dark or this is too bitter.
Hmm.
Uh, what I do see is when you offer somebody who likes uh, products that are less sweet, a milk chocolate, for instance, he doesn't appreciate that, and similarly, when you offer somebody who likes
Sure.
really sweet things, something dark, they don't appreciate that.
Sure.
I think we uh, the mistake that we do is we try to sort of stereotype or characterize ourselves into one set of uh, tastes, but whereas we are complex people, right? As a society, I think there is a larger trend of preferring less sweet things,
Hmm.
and that's where everything is moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
um, but in terms of the chocolate, do Indians like chocolatey chocolate, or do they prefer, like, do you have any of those insights that you've been able to glean so far?
yeah, so I mean that's how we develop product, right? That's
Hmm.
I make about 42 different couvertures, and I've developed my style as a chocolate maker, keeping in mind what we as Indians might like. I am a kid who grew up in the 90s, and for
Okay.
me, growing up, for me, a chocolate is a dairy milk,
Yeah.
right? And I like it, right? I grew up eating that. I have a strong connection with it. I find it yummy,
Yeah.
right? Now, uh, we have a tendency in the craft world to come and say, what you like is not good. You should like something else, or you need to elevate yourself to enjoy
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. A
something
better
better.
product. Yeah.
Yeah, but I like what I like,
Hmm.
right? Who's anybody to tell me that I should like something else?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So our attempt has been to kind of align those two worlds,
Hmm.
to balance familiarity with inventiveness and complexity. So my style as a chocolate maker is to start introducing complexity in craft chocolate along with what we find familiar. So for us, it's the dairy milk, for instance, is this sweet but
Yeah.
very smooth, velvety,
Yeah.
chocolatey chocolate,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And chocolatey is a keyword in our uh, taste profiling around our
Yeah.
product. So I
Mm-hmm.
make a 67% dark single origin West Godavari. That's a core chocolate in my offering. It's one of our most applied chocolate in product. And the way I've made that chocolate is that, it starts with these very familiar notes of what we like in chocolate, right? Which is um, it's sort of like molassy, jaggery, cashew
Mm-hmm.
nut, nutty,
Yeah.
and then uh, uh, like brownie, cocoa, those flavor profiles that are very centered
Mm-hmm.
around what we find familiar with chocolate or how we imagine chocolate. And then it kind of takes you to this slight complexity of citrus, some sort of lime, a stone fruit. That's really pleasant to introduce you that, oh, this can also be chocolate.
Right, right. Okay, that's super interesting. You were talking about grinding and the process of making chocolate. What a lot of people don't know is that a very essential part of chocolate technology was inspired by the idly grinder. Could you explain how that came to be and what India's contribution is in that regard?
The idli grinder is super interesting. So somewhere in the early 2000s, this the adaptation of this idli grinder, several people are credited with this. There's a company called Coco Town.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the history. I've not really validated it, but from what I hear, this grinder comes from Coimbatore. It's been made
Yeah.
for many years before that. Somebody thought that if we adapt it and we put a gearbox to it, it can run for several days
Mm-hmm.
without heating up. And that kind of changed the history of chocolate
Mm-hmm.
because uh, now anybody can make chocolate, right? And
Right.
you can make it in a batch size as small as 2 kgs. So that kind of went to Europe and then went to the States, and this whole craft chocolate movement started proliferating from the mid 2000s onwards.
Mm.
Uh, and that it in many ways it really has changed the history of chocolate because before that you couldn't make chocolate in small batches,
Right.
right? Or you couldn't make chocolate without really expensive machines.
I see. Okay, cool. Um, for people who are listening, a lot of people don't know what dark chocolate is supposed to taste like. Most people just think that it's bitter chocolate. So how does one tell if they're tasting good quality dark chocolate? Are there any pointers that you can give people?
So first of all, I think people would. I'm trying to see if I have a bar of chocolate here. But people would want, I think people are unfamiliar with how to read a chocolate label,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
There are percentages, there are origins, there's dark milk, like, and there's a lot of confusion because there's no sort of system that everybody follows.
Yeah, it's not standard.
Uh, it's not standardized. So, but the percentage on a chocolate bar, usually let's take 60%, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a percentage, and usually it should be followed by the word dark or the word milk. And off late, there's a new thing called dark milk, right? Which I'll come to later.
Okay.
So 60% dark implies that 60% of what's in that chocolate comes from the cacao bean.
Hmm.
It's either cacao solid or cacao fat, right?
Okay.
40% of it is sugar,
Hmm.
right?
And it's always
60 per,
sugar. It isn't like sugar and milk solids
so I'm
or
coming
anything.
there. So if it says
Okay.
six, if it says 50, it's, let's say it says 45% milk.
Hmm.
That means that 45% of that chocolate comes from the cacao bean, cacao
Mm-hmm.
solid or cacao butter, and 55% is milk solids, sugar, anything else like vanilla that's in there,
Right.
right? Now, general convention is that for something to be labeled dark, it should be at least 60% cacao content.
Hmm.
But you can go to the supermarket now and you can pick up things that have on the label things like intense dark chocolate.
Yeah.
And if you kind of read the label carefully enough, you'll find out that it has milk solids and it's less than like 45% cacao content.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of confusion there,
Yeah.
right? Now, the question was what
How do you
people
know you're
should, how do
tasting
you
good quality?
differentiate
Yeah.
between good and bad chocolate?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, so one is the terms that you see on labels and how it's labeled, in terms of if they're able to tell you where that cacao came from, if they're able to tell you what the percentage is, and at the on the back of pack there are not more than three or four ingredients,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's one starting point of determining if this is craft chocolate.
Yeah.
Uh, when you taste it, if you can taste complexity, which are things, if you can taste uh, flavors and you're able to distinguish and differentiate between different things that you can taste in different chronologies, if things you're able to taste different things as it melts.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, at different intensities, that each of those flavors at any of the sequence has different intensities, and it has a really nice clean finish or a long finish, and the way it melts. These are ways for you to determine whether this is uh,
A
uh,
good quality chocolate.
good quality craft chocolate or it's industrial chocolate.
Right.
More often than not, if something is Belgian or has a European tag,
Mm-hmm.
it's industrial chocolate because cacao doesn't grow in Europe. It's a reminder to us, which we often fail to see, that
Mm-hmm.
cacao and colonialism have a dark history, and
Yeah.
cacao and slavery have an inseparability in history.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and this is mostly cacao that comes from Ivory Coast and Ghana, which
Mm-hmm.
is really cheap commercial bulk cacao that we buy, seeing that it is Belgian,
Yeah.
right? So that is a quick thumb rule that if something is proclaiming itself to be good for the fact that it is Belgian, it is probably industrial and not very good.
Right. Okay, great. Super. So, Chaitanya, you're trying to build this great future of Indian chocolate, where Indian cacao beans, have a name for themselves. Uh, what, according to you, is the future of Indian craft chocolate, and what does that look like, or what would you like for it to look like?
I think what makes it really exciting for us in India with craft chocolate is that unlike craft coffee or beer or wine or any other craft movement, cheese, where the movements happened elsewhere in some other market and matured, and they then came to India more as a business concept,
Mm-hmm.
and people tried to copy or mimic or get on that wave uh, in a more superficial or shallow manner. Craft chocolate globally is so recent, it's so nascent, it's so small. It's really a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the global cacao or chocolate world. It's not even enough to mention.
Mhm.
It's a fraction of a single percentage point. It's so early, and we are able to get on this into this movement in India. Like several people have been working in this right now, so early that it makes it something that we can lead instead of follow.
Super. Thank you so much. We're going to jump into a quick, short, rapid fire round. So I'm just going to say a phrase or a word, and you tell me the first thing that pops to your head. So, what is your favorite kind of chocolate?
I like chocolate that is not very dark but not very sweet either. So I like chocolate in the 70s, the 70% range. One of my favorite chocolates that we make right now is a 75% dark chocolate that I make from beans that I get from a farmer in Vietnam, from a region called Lam Dong, called the 75% dark Lam Dong. It's got these fruity notes of berries.
What's a big no when it comes to chocolate? Something that instantly puts you off.
Vanillin,
Mhm.
and even vanilla.
Okay, you're not a
Uh,
fan. What's a weird chocolate pairing that you love?
I like chocolate and coffee.
Hmm.
I think that's an interesting. It's often like done badly, and it's really difficult to do
Yeah, in a way that's
because
nice and that works. Yeah.
you have to get both things right.
Hmm. Okay. And what's something you're super excited about when it comes to Manam?
We're really excited about trying to scale this fast, trying to get this to other markets in other cities because we've seen a response that we didn't anticipate. So, we have all the right people, and they're all part of this team. So we're looking forward to kind of making this visible and accessible in other cities really soon, and that's what we're focused on right now.
Amazing. So we can all expect Manam in different parts of India very, very soon.
I hope.
Great. Thank you so much, Chaitanya. This has been a lot of fun and I've learned a lot. And I'm hoping that whoever's listening to this is also going to learn a fair amount about chocolate as well.
No,
Thank you
thank you
so
for
much.
having me.
It's been a pleasure. Like, share, and subscribe to the Big Food Energy podcast for more inspirational and important stories from the world of food.